as well as maintaining my actual job. The benefits of using Airbnb instead of renting the place out like you normally would is that you would have the chance to make a lot more money if your house gets booked a lot. Being in a relatively high traffic area for vacations, Airbnb was a great option for us. My wife and I were excited in the beginning, but they got more demanding as more people booked the house. We needed to keep everything on schedule and hire cleaning services after the first customers left and before the next ones came, as well as be sure to respond to their messages and emails in a timely manner. But things were going well for a couple of years before we had what we thought was a young couple staying at the house. Just like every other time, when they arrived, I texted them the unlock code for the door. I almost never actually see the customers. After they let me know that they were inside and everything was good, I sat back and relaxed for the rest of my day off. I should also mention that I almost never even talk to the customers more than just a couple texts. Usually they text me when they get there and when they leave, and sometimes an occasional question about the house, but that's usually it. But as 9 o'clock came around and I was just about to get ready for bed, I got a text from the young man staying at the house. It was short, saying he was going to call me in a minute, and then a minute later he called. I already had a bad feeling when I saw the text, but what he said still surprised me. He said that the water wasn't working in the house. Of course, I apologized, though I didn't understand how that could be possible, but living in a house without water is unacceptable, so I knew I had to get it fixed immediately. I asked if I could come check it out really quick so that I could have someone come in the morning to fix it. He agreed, being very polite about the whole thing, and I drove over there a few minutes later. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed two cars. At the time, this wasn't necessarily a red flag, but more just an odd thing I noticed because they were apparently a young couple on vacation for a single night. So I didn't understand why they would rent two separate cars. I thought someone must be visiting them, which actually isn't allowed, but I didn't mind so much. I walked up to the front door and knocked before entering the code and walking inside. It was very quiet. I expected them to be waiting for me, but they weren't anywhere that I could see. I probably should have looked around for them first, but I was tired and just wanted to get this over with. The first thing I wanted to check was the main water valve to make sure there wasn't a leak or flood. So I went down to the basement and over to the valve. Everything seemed normal, no water anywhere or signs of damage. I was confused, but then I fiddled with the valve and immediately heard water start rushing again. I turned it more, realizing it had been completely shut off manually. I stayed in the basement for another minute, trying to understand why this was done, before I started to get a really uncomfortable feeling, especially since I didn't even see the people when I walked inside. I just couldn't see how it could have been anyone other than them who turned off the water, which meant they were trying to get me to come over on purpose, maybe give them a discount on their stay for the inconvenience. I decided I was going to leave and get my car, then try calling them back just to be safe. I got up and started walking towards the stairs until I heard the basement door open, followed by multiple sets of footsteps walking down. When they got to the bottom, 3 men stood there. One of them said,
"Is it fixed?"
sounding like the same man I talked to on the phone, but all of these men were much older than the young man that I thought was staying at the house. I told them it should be working now and that the valve must have just tightened on its own. I was trying not to point any blames since the whole thing was making me so uncomfortable. I just wanted to get out of that basement and away from these guys. They all just kind of stood there looking at me, not saying anything after that. "Well, let me know if you need anything else," I said, walking between them trying to get to the stairs. They still just stood there watching me walk around them. But as I went past the third guy closest to the stairs, I spotted a gun shoved in the back of his pants. It made me freak out a little and I rushed a bit quicker up the stairs, but they didn't follow. They stayed in the basement as I quickly walked out the door and drove away. When I got home, I woke up my wife and told her what had happened. She convinced me to call the police to check up on them. They weren't the people we thought were staying there, and the situation was strange, so it felt justified. I think we waited 20 minutes before a call came from an officer claiming nobody seemed to be home and that he may need me to open the door. I gave him the code instead, and he called back another 20 minutes later saying that there was no signs of anyone still being there. The next day, we found out the card the man paid with was stolen, and after looking around the house, they had stolen some expensive decorations and appliances as well. I guess there never actually was a young couple either. The one thing that was left unexplained was their whole plan with the water not working. I think they either wanted me and not charge them for their stays so that hopefully they could use the stolen card for longer, or they were planning on robbing me at gunpoint. But then that makes me question why they didn't. 3 dangerous, unidentified men blocking my exit in the basement after leading me into a trap, and they just let me go. It doesn't make sense to me. But after that, I never went to the house while customers were home, and a few months later, we stopped using Airbnb and just put the house up for rent. I was taking a solo trip to Salt Lake City last year. I'd never actually had the chance to go on many vacations before, and when I did, it was always with my family. This was the first time I was finally going to get to enjoy my time somewhere else, all by myself. I know it sounds a bit weird, but being alone is fine with me, especially since I'd never get to be alone anyway. I looked up both hotels and Airbnbs in the area, and surprisingly, the Airbnbs were a lot nicer and less pricey. However, all the cheaper ones were a bit further away from the city. I was driving my own car though, so I didn't care too much about having to travel a bit to the city and went with a nicely sized Airbnb. It was small, but the kitchen and bedroom were nice, which was all I really cared about. I got there at 6 on Sunday morning, and the owner texted me the password and I brought all of my stuff inside. It was really nice, much better than the small apartment I shared with my roommate. Once I got everything inside and set up, I hopped on the couch and turned on the TV. It was a 10-hour drive, so I was looking forward to chilling for the night and enjoying the silence. I fell asleep pretty quickly, but it was only around 7 o'clock, so my body woke me up a few hours later. The time was just past 10 and the TV was still on. I grabbed the remote and turned it off, then got up to get a glass of water before going to the bedroom. As I walked from the living room to the kitchen, I felt a strong cold breeze brush against me. With my tired eyes, I looked to my right and saw the front door was fully open. My eyes shot open and my heart pounded. I stared at the door for a moment, then looked around the room. I knew I had closed it and locked it, so this was really freaking me out. I walked over to the door and closed it softly, listening intently for any sounds of someone being inside. For reference, I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I am fairly tall and in shape. So unless an intruder had a gun, I felt confident I could force them away. I grabbed the kitchen knife, still being quiet, and walked room to room, checking every inch of the house. Nobody was there. This only confused me more, and I sent a text to the homeowner, asking if someone was supposed to come over tonight or something, explaining what happened. It was late though, so I didn't expect a response right away. I went around to every door, locking each one, then quickly checked the house again. While more awake than I was before, I was still really tired. I went to bed and fell asleep with no trouble. When I woke up, though, I was much less calm than I was before. I heard something from outside, not outside the house, but outside my bedroom door. I didn't know what to do and kind of just froze, waiting for whoever was outside the room to do something first. As I sat there in bed, I thought about how the person could have possibly gotten in. The only person who would have the password to the door was the homeowner. So honestly, in that moment, I was sure it was him. This gave me more courage, thinking it must be some creepy guy who likes to spy on the people who stay at his Airbnb. I got out of bed, still not having heard anything else, and grabbed my phone from the nightstand to call the cops. I must have made too much noise, though, because almost right, someone started running away from the door and toward the front of the house. That only frightened me more, knowing that the intruder was standing right next to the bedroom door the entire time. I dialed 911, but during the time it took for the cops to arrive, nothing else happened. The person had left. I found a hotel to stay at for the rest of the vacation, but the owner of the Airbnb gave me a refund as he was able to prove it wasn't him. He was very concerned about it, and he was actually a really nice old man. It was already creepy enough when I thought it was the owner, but knowing that it was just some random guy makes it even worse. I don't know how he was able to get in or why he was stalking me, but that still gives me chills thinking about it. The part one think about the most is waking up and seeing the front door open. Now that I know that someone was actually in the house, that meant that whoever it was came in and saw me asleep on the couch, then proceeded to do whatever it was they came there to do. It's just really unnerving and creepy, and makes me never want to be at an Airbnb alone.